Hi, Dan here from onlinebasscourses.com. Hope you're doing really well. In this lesson, I'm going to show you how to make up and learn bass lines really easily. So for this example, I'm going to stick to the key of C major and I want you to play it this way. So I'm going fret 3, 5, 7 on the A string, 3, 5, 7 on the D string, and 4, 5 on the G string. That literally is just C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. I'm also using fingers 1, 2, and 4, and then 1, 2, and 4 again, and 1 and 2. A little bit tricky there, so don't worry too much about having to get that all the notes under that one stretch. You can play that with your first finger, and then shift across a bit with your thumb sliding at the back of the neck. But I really want you to see that pattern that's right down there. Notice that you can use the dot, the fret markers here. You've got dot, 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 and then no dot, and then 5th fret, okay? Right, so that's the first thing to get, is that pattern. There are many ways of playing this. I want to restrict ourselves to this pattern now just to demonstrate the point, and then when you can break out of this, and I'll show you a few little tips and tricks as we go. But number these. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 8. That's an octave. The C to the C is an octave. 8 notes away, okay? Otherwise, if you number these notes, musicians use chord progressions to write music. And also that Nashville number system you may have heard uses Roman numerals to describe these numbers. So for example, if we do a 1, 5, 6, 4, that would be the first note, the 1. The 5, which is you just play these sequence of notes till you get to number 5. So a 5 is always going to be 2 frets across and 1 string down on the next string there. It's always going to be that pattern. That's a perfect 5th. Always going to do that. The 6 is the next note in the scale. That's the 7th fret. And then the 4. So 1, 5, 6, 4 sounds like that. If I use 8th notes, just as the 5 is always going to be in that location from the root note, so the 6th is always going to be 2 frets away from that. The 4 is always going to be underneath the first note, the root note. And the 2nd is going to be, they're all going to be in this exact same position. The 2nd is 2 frets across. The 3rd is 1, 2, 3, 4 frets across. If you play a scale like this, you'll know that that E, which is the 3rd, the major 3rd, is also on the 2nd fret of the D string. All those notes, the 5, the 6, and the 4, you can put those down the octave. So it's F, G, and A, also to be played on the 1st, 3rd, and 5th frets of the E string. It's still, even I'm going down to a lower string, it's still, the 1 is still the 1, that G is still the 5, that A is still the 6, and the F is still the 4. It doesn't matter where you play them, the position within the scale doesn't change. Stand By Me type chord progression there. It's just the C, the 1, to the 6. Doesn't matter where you play it. There's the 4, 5. Visually, nothing's changing here. So that means that if I move key, I'm going to be doing exactly the same patterns. And if you're on a gig, that helps. Singers often will call last minute, last second, do that in this key. And on bass, we're covered. You know, a keyboard player might have to reach across to the transpose button, or maybe they know how to transpose. It's more difficult. On the bass, it's just a question of moving the patterns around. Let's develop the idea a little bit more now. Another really very, very common chord progression which you may have heard of, 2-5-1. So you just find the note within the scale. The 2 is the 2nd note. There it is. That's the D in this case. The 5 is the 5th note. And If you remember the pattern from before, just there's the fifth. If you just use notes from the scale to connect up the chords, it's going to sound nice and melodic. I'm going to show you that because that's really important. I mentioned transitioning between chords, between notes, and just listen to your favorite bass lines. You'll hear lots of different ways of doing this. And when you play bass for a long, long time, you'll actually start to recognize very similar things. So for example, the 2 is the D on the 5th fret, and I'm going to the 5, which is the 5th fret of the G string. We can approach that note chromatically from above it, so I'm going fret 7, 6, 5, or the other side, so go 3, 4, 5 this time. And there's the 1. And I'm going to make things up as we go, just to elaborate, just to show you a few more things. Let's do that 1, 5, 6, 4 again. Now there, I was just using a 5th, except I was doing the 5th down the octave. Let me explain. So C is the root note of this entire thing. Go 5 notes up from there. That's a power chord when you play them both together. So that's a 5th. Put that note, the 5th fret of the D string, down an octave, and you'll see that it's on exactly the same fret as our root note, but just down to a string below. It's in the same pattern there, 5th, when I go to the next chord. And there I was just adding the 5th where we might normally play it. Okay, so we're just adding roots and 5ths there. Really, really simple. And there, I'm doing the same idea, except I'm connecting up the notes of the chords, the notes there, the root notes, just with notes from the scale, you know. I'm breaking out of my restricted pattern. I don't know if you've noticed that. I did want to put a restriction on this, but you know, when you're making music, you hear that you want to go somewhere else. So that's what I was doing there. And I was just using notes from the C major scale, you know, just in different parts of the bass. Very important to learn it in different parts. So instead of going up in pitch from that C, I was going down in pitch. So you're going to be able to make up your own bass lines using this approach, but you're also going to be able to learn songs much, much easily with this method, because songs are comprised of these chord progressions, like, you know, the 1, 5, 6, 4 or 2, 5, 1. Songs do this all the time. There's that really great, is it Axis of Awesome, I think? I'll put a link to it below, or just Google it, YouTube it. It's just a band from Australia, and they do a 10-minute sketch of loads of different songs. It's just the same chord progression. I think it's required watching that, because you just instantly realise, oh, so you're telling me, especially as a bass player, you only need those exact 4 notes just to play all those songs, more or less. Yes, you can play loads of songs just using that one progression. We've used roots, we've used 5ths. Let's just stick to really simple octaves now. So on the root note, the C, the first chord, remember that an octave is just where you go 2 frets across and 2 strings down. One very common octave pattern. Now notice that if I go to the D string, I don't have a C string here to do an octave. That's why I'm going to drop down to the E string to play you know, some of the notes from this chord. So I'm going to break out of the pattern that I showed you before. I'll show you this. So if I descend a scale, I'm just going C, B, A, G, F, and you've got E as well. Very, very good trick, if you like, is just to know the notes from a scale. In this case, it's C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And if you want to go down, not up, you just go backwards down that selection of notes. Notice there's no flat sharps. You go C, B, A, G, F, E. So you're playing the notes of the scale and you're also learning the notes as you go. So I'm going to go in that direction. I can do octaves on every single one of those notes. They're quite specialized octaves. You're not going to use that in every style of music, but let's add a fifth in. You can play so many bass lines just by playing the root and the fifth and the octave of a chord. There's only two different notes in there. The octave's the same as the root. You really, really can play so many different bass lines just by doing that. Start to connect them up a bit. As I was playing that, I was just really hearing some reggae, and for that we need thirds. We've used roots, fifths, octaves. Doesn't define a chord. The third note defines a chord. So if you're playing your scale, a triad is just the first, third, and fifth notes of a chord. Okay, so of a scale. You play them together, you get a chord. So if I've got C, D, E, F, G. The C is the first note, the E is the third note, the G is the fifth note. I was going C, G, and F, and every single one of those chords shares the exact same major triad. So that was nice there, just to use the same pattern every time. Okay, that's just a fifth. Digger, 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 digger. Start to use some sixteenths or some eighths. You should really start to work on your ear as you do that, and do realize that you've got the notes, that's half the story. Rhythm is a really, really big deal as well. I'll link to a video I've just done about some common bass rhythms, but once you start to get the common bass rhythms and this little method here of just being able to figure out your own bass lines, and also whilst doing it realize that famous bass lines come from this. How many bass lines have you heard that sound a bit like that? I'm just going 1, 5, 4 this time. That's the C, G to the F. What about 1, 4, 5? C, F, G. How many times do you have to play that, do you think, before you start to hear a song and recognize, without your bass anywhere near you, that's a 1, 4, 5 chord progression? The answer is not many times. You just do this a few times and you'll recognize that. And that's how you hear people, or you see people just play a song really, really quickly, because they're using their ears, okay? And it's not magic, it's just practice. The basis of that, we're playing the root notes of chords here, you know. Imagine that other instruments will be playing the chords as they're going. But it's important for you to realize that you're just playing the, well, what are you doing? The root, the fifth, the third of the chord. And that's how bass lines are really constructed. You're using these chord tones, and then you're also using notes within the scale to connect up. That's the C major pentatonic. So So just think of a rhythm and pick one of the ideas we were using there. So what about the root going down to a fifth? Let's do a rhythm a bit like that. It sounds a bit like Kung Fu Fighting and Valerie. Now, just making that up as I go, just using those ideas. I've got a strong sense of where the pulse is, and I changed a section there to go to, you know, an F to a G. Now, if you're doing this and you're starting to get a bit of joy from this, make sure that you understand the chords that come from this. Since we're not playing them, I haven't really talked about them, but the chord that comes from the first note of a major scale is a major chord. Then over the second, it's a minor. Over the third, it's a minor. This is just a general hard and fast law. This works in any major key. You have a major chord, a minor chord, major, major, minor, and the seventh one is a little bit of a weird one. We've got like a diminished triad, okay? That's not often used in chord progressions, but the other ones are. So it would really, really, really help you to learn that order. You have a scale. You have an arpeggio. If you play notes of that arpeggio together at the same time, you get what's called a chord. And then you can do that on every single one of these notes, and that's the basis of music. Okay? That's a little bit of a level above what I was talking about, which is just messing around and making up your own thing as you go. So I really hope that gives you a few ideas, a little springboard to start to make up your own ideas. You're going to come up with something completely different to mine based on what music you like, how fast you're going to be going, what tones you're using a plectrum. You know, this was just in C major. You can use the relative minor, which is A minor, and get a different flavor. You can use a mode, and again, that's going to be a completely different color. So this is just really, really scratching the surface, but I want you just to see what you can come up with using this idea, and remember to record any ideas you like. And this is a blend between improvising, working on rhythms, knowing your music theory. There's a lot to learn, isn't there? And technique to actually get you around the instrument. There's a lot to learn to get this together, but the point is to have fun as you're doing it, to play something that actually inspires you and makes you think, this sounds good, I want to continue this. And make sure just to tweak everything, just every day as you go. You know, if you're having a bit of trouble with the technique, then focus on that. But I think if you're playing through things like this, it's just going to help everything, including your ear. So I hope you enjoyed that lesson. I hope you got something from it. If a load of questions have sprung from this, just put them in the comments below. I reply to every comment I get. And also, I often just do videos that come from that. So do leave a comment below. Please do subscribe. And if you can share and like the video, that would be really good, because it just helps me with the channel. Things are starting to grow a bit, very, very slowly. But I'm really, really thankful for everyone that subscribes. And I'll try to give you as much really cool stuff to play on your bass as I can. How about that? Right, thanks for watching. See you next time.